Good evening, everyone. Welcome to another beautiful evening with us. This is Live with Lloyd. I'm your host, Lloyd Strayhorn, with the joy of numerology is the joy of learning and enlightenment. And I am too excited. I have a very special guest. You see him on the screen, and you will be able to interact with him very shortly. But I want to let you know as I do the cosmic forecast. Oh, I always forget, but let me remind you, please like, share, and subscribe. Okay, I see I have to do that at the top because I forget. Anyway, like, share, and subscribe, but only if you're sincere about what you'd like to share, and what you'd like to subscribe to. All right. Right now, for the cosmic forecast, the sun is in Sagittarius. The moon is in the sign of Cancer. It's an 8 universal month, what remains of December. It's an 11 universal week for this week up until the 21st. And today is a 1 universal day. If you want to know how I did it, it's simple. You just say today, December the 20th, added to 2021, and it adds up to the number one. And speaking of that guest, my guest that you see on the screen is number one on a whole lot of levels, and he happens to be born on a day that's a number one. So I want to welcome to the screen. Hold up, let me do this and get this together, get this out the way. See, John, this is what I'm talking about. Hold on. So anyway, I'll be with you in just, here we go. There we go. Here we go. Right here. John, how you
There
doing,
he
brother?
is. I'm good. Thanks for having me on.
Thanks for having us and being here with us and everything like that. It's interesting. I had the privilege of being on your show twice in a couple of years ago. And so it was nice to turn around and people says the John Edward. I'd say yes, the John Edward. And I guess because of the popularity. In fact, I remember my relatives watching your show called at that time Crossing Over. And let me ask you this though. What led you on this journey, especially describing yourself as a psychic medium? Because sometimes the word psychic creates or connotes a bad term or something like that. What led you down this path?
So my family, my mom's side of the family was always into having like people come to the house and do readings, card readings, psychic readings. They even had a seance. They weren't so much into the astrology or the numerology of it, but just the field itself. They were highly into the subject matter.
Hmm.
My dad was a New York City police officer, a career army guy, not a big fan of anything in the psychic arena.
That makes
But
sense.
I wasn't allowed around the subject matter. I was kind of kept away from it. Like
Really?
whenever that ish was happening, like it was like we keep him away. But
Hmm.
long story short, my mom and dad divorced, and I think I was like 13, so I moved into my grandmother's house, which was like the paranormal hub. And in that time period, they had psychics come to the house, and I used to make fun of the people that were there. And then there was one woman that they brought. Her name is Lydia Clark, who'd be a great guest for you to have on. But Lydia was the person who did my first reading, and in that reading, she put me on my path. She told me that I have this ability and that I was going to be like speaking all over the world. I was going to be on radio and TV and write books about the subject matter. And legitimately, I was 15 years old, and I think maybe my greatest aspiration was to own a deli. Like at that, like I didn't had no idea like what
Yeah,
I
of all
wanted to
things,
do.
right?
Yeah, I was like, I didn't know what I wanted to do, but I realized I was working at a deli at the time, so I was like, all right, like this lady's crazy.
So when you did that, after that point, what led you on the path eventually? You said cardology, then reading books or whatever, and then just evolving.
So after I had that first reading, some of the things that she told me that sounded ridiculous happened within a very short period of time.
Hmm.
And like the turnaround on her like validation and predictions were literally within 2 weeks. And I say this all the time. It didn't leave me with a feeling of being wowed. I didn't say, she's amazing. I actually felt violated, Lloyd. I felt like I didn't like the feeling. I didn't like that she knew stuff. Like, I don't know. I don't know. I didn't like it. It made me feel uncomfortable. It was like
Hmm.
this woman knew stuff about like my life, and she knew
Hmm.
stuff about what was coming up and it happened.
Hmm.
So my journey began by trying to figure out how to make sure that can't ever happen again. And I equate it to when someone like their house gets robbed. Well, the first thing that they want to do now is put in a security system to make sure that they don't get robbed again, right? So energy wise, I went from a place of feeling violated to I want to protect my energy. So I went to the local public library, and at the time, back in 1985, everything in the town of Glen Cove in that library was under the occult section. And I was embarrassed to check the books out. So after
Really?
school, yeah, after school, I would sit on the public library floor in that section, and I read every book that they had. And it was that journey of learning. And the more I learned, the more I became intrigued, the more I questioned, the more I wanted to seek out like other people besides Lydia.
Mm-hmm.
And my mom had always gone to the psychic fairs on Long Island, and she went to a psychic fair, and she brought back all these business cards like of people that I think she wanted to have come to the house to do like house parties. And I started to go to them privately, and in a few of those readings they all said the same thing. They were like, you are so psychic, you have this ability, you're going to do this. It was like, and then I thought, like, is this like a thing? Like, do they tell this to everybody? Like does everybody hear this? And then
Yeah.
like I was waiting for the come take my class, like do that, but nobody ever invited me to take their class. It was just like,
Mm-hmm.
oh, by the way, you have this. So again, being intrigued, my journey was one of being an explorer. So I tell people in life to be seekers and to be explorers because that leads to discovery. And with discovery, that raises your awareness. And when you have your awareness raised, then you could put things into action and make changes. And in change my life, it did.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And in fact, I was flattered when I was a guest on your show. You told me that one of the first numerology books you read was mine.
Yes. And I said to you, I have the original copy of it still to this day, handy. It's like one of the books that like it doesn't leave that book doesn't leave me. Like that book traveled around the world with me. That book has come with me in more places than you could possibly imagine. So you were the person, my friend, that I was so like when you said yes to come on my show, I was like, wait, the Lloyd Strayhorn? Like he is actually the guy that like the first book that I ever read on
That's
numerology.
what I'm
Like
saying. G. John Edwards is coming on, so it's nice. It's nice. Had you known anything about numerology or astrology before, other than just the cards?
no, before your book, no. Before your book, I had heard about it. There were people that at the fairs had they did it and they talked about it. But I was very card driven. I was very like whether it be tarot cards or I used to read a deck of Spanish cards.
Mm,
My uncle was married to a woman, and she was amazing at the cards, and she would read with Spanish playing cards. So like the cards you would see at a bodega in Manhattan are the cards that I learned how to read with. And so that was pretty much my that and psychometry. I loved psychometry, the concept of holding a person's object and being able to tune into them through their watch, their ring, their bracelet, so something along those lines. Um, but then once I started getting more involved, I remember thinking, I I I need more knowledge. And that was what led me to you, was I needed the more knowledge. And
mhm.
your book was like literally put in front of me at a time where the I need more knowledge. And I used to do my readings, like I would literally before early on when a client came to me, I would sit with your book and I would meditate on a client's birth date. I would do the stuff that's in your book and then psychically add to it. And then they would leave with that.
That's interesting. Do you remember your first reading and what was the experience your first time out?
Using numerology?
No, not numerology, just the fact of your first client, just where you
Oh,
and
I,
now as a
I
kid
do.
being told,
Yeah,
and then now all of a sudden now it's your turn to start reading people.
I do. I remember my cousin Florence coming to my grandmother's house and she asked me to read for her. So I did. I had the cards and I had the little book that comes with the cards and I'd like, flip the cards and I looked at it and then, told her the images and the feelings and the stuff that I got about it. And
Hmm.
then I remember thinking, I am completely like, telling her a story. This is like a novel in my mind that's being like downloaded to me. And then about 2 weeks later, she called me back and said, "Are you going to be at grandma's house on Sunday?" And I went, yeah, I live here, so yeah, I'll be here. I go, why? And she said, well, I want to know if you could do my cards again. And I laughed. I was like, I just did them for you. And she goes, yeah, but everything you said happened. I'm like, Florence, I have no idea what I'm doing. She goes, well, great. Have no idea what you're doing again for me when I come on Sunday.
I like
And
your
that
mom.
was, yeah, that was like, that's how it started. And then she actually got me to read for some of her friends. So there was an old commercial, a hair commercial for, I think it was Agree shampoo, and they told two friends, and so on, and so on, and so on.
And everything
That's
is
how it,
great.
yep, that's how it started. And then I went to go to see someone that did something called rune casting. I don't know, Lloyd, if you've ever seen somebody do rune casting, but I
No.
went for a reading. I went for a reading, and she, put the runes in the
Oh,
bag, and I,
moonstones.
yeah, rune stones, yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
So I dropped the rune stones, and she literally looked at them, and she went, "Wow, you're very psychic." And I went, "So I've heard." And she said, "Hold on." And she got up from the reading, which I thought was the most unprofessional moment, went to the phone and called this woman, and her name was Sheila. And she said, Sheila, I'm reading for a gentleman. Um, she said, I'm reading for a gentleman. I was like 15, 16 at the time. She goes, I'm reading for a gentleman that you need to meet. He needs to work at the psychic fairs. And when she said that, I literally, Lloyd, I literally was at her table like, like, what are you talking
Figured
about?
that.
Like,
Yeah.
I can't do this. I've done this for like friends and cousins. Anyway, I called up the woman, and the woman said, "Come to Staten Island." So I went to the Snug Harbor Cultural Center on Staten Island, and I met the woman who ran the psychic fairs. And she said, "Go have a seat in that back table. I'll be with you in a moment." So I went into the room where all the other psychics were sitting doing readings, and I sat at the back table and I waited for her. She came and she sat down, and she was very excited. She went, "Okay, go ahead." And I was like, "Go ahead, what?"
What?
And she goes, "Go ahead, like read for me." And I did. And I'm going to say this as I said it to her, it was the worst reading I've ever done ever in my life. And she said to me, okay. And she got up and like walked away. And then I don't know, 10 minutes later, somebody walked over with a ticket and said, here. And I was like, here what? And she's like, I don't know. She goes, I think you take the ticket and then you read me. And I went,
That's
oh,
right.
I go, they gave you the, I said, no, this is them. This is a mistake. So I take her to the front and I said to the woman, I'm like, Sheila, I go, this woman she came to the wrong table. I don't know where to send her. And she goes, I sent her to you. And I was like, wait, you want me to read today? And she was like, yeah. And I read 9 people that day. My first psychic fair, I read 9 people.
Wow. Wow. Let me ask you this. What happened when you reached that other level where you now tapping into people that had crossed over that led to your show? Does that make sense?
It does. So I had been told early on that I had that ability. I had no interest in it, like zero.
Hmm. Hmm.
Um, and I was way more, you're a 16-year-old guy who can predict the future accurately for other people. That carries a little bit of, kind of like swagger. You know what I'm saying? Like I
Yeah.
had a little bit of that, like energy
Yeah.
wise. Like I was good. It was accurate. People were coming to see me for it. Why would I care about people who like not my thing. There were other
Hmm.
people at the time that were very well known for it, and it wasn't something that I had an interest in. My uncle died, and between my uncle passing in 1987 and my mom passing in 1989,
Hmm.
I always say that those two events bookended the explosion of my ability into that world. And if anybody's ever seen WandaVision, the TV show, she's a character that comes off of the Avengers, and they
Hmm.
did this whole great series. And I always tell people to watch it, and they go, "Oh, I'm not into superheroes." I'm like, don't think about it as a show about superheroes. It's actually a show about grief. It's about grief and loss and mourning, and the backdrop are these characters that are, superheroes. And there's something that Wanda Maximoff, the character, does in her grief. And I feel like the way Wanda created this whole world because of her grief, because of mine, my world got created in the same kind of way. Wasn't something I was looking for, so it's something that I wanted, but it happened because I needed it. Like I needed to know there was more. Now, from my uncle passing to my mom passing, and then as a result of that, my ability started to kind of shift a little bit. Like it had happened, but it wasn't something that I focused on, Lloyd. It wasn't something that
Mhm.
I was interested in. And then
Mhm.
I remember doing a reading for somebody, and I would say to them, listen, hey, I know you're here because you want to talk about like your family, your job, your relationships, and what's coming up for you. I said, but if you don't mind, if I can just in the beginning, I'm going to need to get your family members that are in spirit out of the way first. And they would look at
Hmm.
me like,
Hmm.
Okay, like, well, all
Yeah.
right, like they weren't there for that. But
Yeah.
if I didn't address it right out of the gate, then they would interrupt the reading. So my journey was I would validate them as quickly as I can, get them out of the way, and then go into what the client wanted to know about, talking about their personal year, their life path, right? Those
Mhm.
types of things, moving into where they're going, looking at the time of stuff, which is where I always found your work to help me. When I saw something coming up for someone, if I didn't know exactly the timing of it, I would look at their personal years and go, well, it looks like there's a big move coming. You're going to be going to a 5 year. It's probably going to be like around this period of time, right? So I'd be able to kind of navigate because of the
Mhm.
numerology. That's how it helped for me then and still.
Mhm.
But I would say that between my uncle passing and my mom's passing, that kind of made my interest shift and change. And then people started to come to me for that as well.
What led to how then did you were you discovered in that sense, for lack of a better word to put it, that eventually led to your highly popular show during those years called Crossing Over?
That's where I was not being psychic, to be honest. The way
Really?
the way the show, yeah, the way the TV show Crossing Over came about, is that people couldn't get a chance to see me privately. I couldn't keep up with the amount of privates. So then the overflow of that became groups. The overflow of the groups became bigger groups, and the groups for me were always classrooms. So I wanted to be like I was teaching people. So you teach with a book. So I was like, I need to write something so people can have. So my first book, One Last Time, came out. And with One Last Time, that was kind of like my journey of development and a lot of the stuff of the early years, like the
Mhm.
Smallville years. But that that process of writing the book and doing all of that, um, I I had a colleague who has now passed, named Michelle Peck, and she wanted to do some bigger events. And she said, we need to promote these events on the radio. And I wound up getting booked onto a radio show. And then from doing a lot of radio, I did a lot of radio. Like radio was like my first love.
Mhm.
I was
Mhm.
on morning radio across the United States. Like almost every day, I was in a different market, sometimes two or three different markets doing the morning drive shows. And
Mhm.
when my book was coming out, the publicity department said we have to do media for that. And I felt like very confident. I was like, I got it. I know exactly what we're gonna do. I'm gonna go across the morning show landscape and do a radio show pushes. And the
Mhm.
woman, her name was Liz, said, yeah, no, no, you need to do television. And I laughed and I went, I don't do TV. I do radio. I do radio. And
Mhm.
she
Mhm.
goes, oh, you don't do TV? And I went, no, I don't do TV. I do radio. And she goes, well, you don't do TV. We don't publish your book. And I was like,
Really?
yeah. She's like,
Okay.
she goes, books are sold through television and talk show appearances. He goes, we will get you on that. Anyway, the spin out of that was a friend of mine at the time. His brother had worked at CNN, and Rick said to me, we have to get you on Larry King. And he talked to somebody that he knew. They put me on Larry King on I think it was like June of 1999 or something along those, somewhere in that 1998, and the
Mhm.
phone lines blew out, and I was back on Larry King very often as a result
Mhm.
of the success of the phone lines. And then from there, I started to get booked on different TV shows, and then I met two producers, and one of the producers said to me, would you ever do your own show? And I said, I would love to do my own national late night radio show. And I said, why? Is that something that you can do? And she said, yeah, kind of. She goes, but I was thinking TV. And I looked at it, I was like, I said, I don't really see me as like the TV guy. I'm the
Mhm.
radio guy, like I
Mhm.
want to do radio. And she said, give me 6 months and let me see what, I can do. She goes, and then, we'll push the radio thing. So Lloyd, I thought, there ain't nobody putting me on TV. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like I didn't think I had a TV look. I had a Long Island accent. I didn't feel like I was TV.
Sure.
Anyway,
Sure.
I don't know, 6 months later, here I am filming a pilot for Crossing Over, and I'm like, is going on? So I don't think they wanted me to see that because if I saw it, I wouldn't have done it.
Who came
But
up with the title crossing over?
the person that came up with the title Crossing Over is a woman by the name of, I want to say Jean. I think it was a woman named Jean. I can't think of her last name, but she was a
Hmm.
consultant that those producers had come up with. That they had brought her in as a consultant, and I think it was Jean that came up with the name Crossing Over.
When you started, how did, because here's the thing, when you are in a situation like that and you got, like, 'cause when I would see it, there would be throngs of people in the audience. And how do you pick up or discern what energies to pick up? Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does, and
Does
it's a
one
great.
stand out
It's a
more than the other, or do they
Yeah.
battle
So
away, so to speak?
in my private sessions, I had already established what that felt like. Because
Ah,
when I'm sitting with you, if I was getting information from my guides or my team of energies that I work with, it feels like it's coming from above me down. So I equate it that if you're standing in the shower head's above you and the water is coming down.
mhm,
That's how it
mhm,
felt, like the information's coming down through me.
mhm,
When
mhm.
someone's family member is coming through, it feels like the water is a garden hose being shot from across where they're sitting. So that's how I was able to discern the difference. If the information was coming or originating around a person, I literally felt like that energy being kind of projected towards where they were. So if I'm in a room full of people, that's how I know where to go. Because it's like this golden lasso pulls me over to where the person is. And I'm like, oh, I'm over there with you.
Yeah, I've seen you demonstrate that on TV, and I'm saying, with all those people in the audience, how were you able to do that? But now that is apart. But so what happens when people ask, and when they do, when these, shall we say, images or feelings come to you, how, in the terms of voices, in the terms of images, in the terms of sound or
I,
smells, or what happens?
all of the above, but I equate it to a daydream. I say to people, if you've ever been in school and you've ever kind of like, or church, someplace where you should be paying attention and somehow it's boring, and you wind up getting like, you drift off somewhere and you kind of like go off into your mind. That's what it, that's what it's like. It's like it's like a dream. It's like fragments in a dream. It's like moments in that dream, and then you're witnessing it. You're bearing witness to whatever it is that you're seeing, experiencing, feeling, thinking. And then I just interpret in my frame of reference. So whatever it is that I see, hear, and feel. Now, the technical terminology, clairvoyance, that's clear seeing, clear audience is clear hearing, clear sentience is clear feeling. There ain't nothing clear about it. Let's just be clear about that.
Yeah, yeah.
But those are what that's what it's called. And now, Lloyd, I don't know if you've ventured onto like social media in the TikTok arena, but there are so many people doing like readings and live readings, and like they like make stuff. I don't know, they make stuff up, like it's like, oh, I'm on my cell phone, so I'm Claire phoning. So like I have a joke with a colleague and I'm like, oh, I'm Claire driving. It's like you can't put Claire in front of a word and then make
Yeah,
it something.
yeah. Well, people do. I think that's interesting. And I've been invited to TikTok. I haven't gotten on that platform. I'm on other platforms, but I'm not there yet. I
It's a
understand it's.
great Yeah, Lloyd, jump on there. It will be great for what you want to do to teach. The audience is awesome. The people are they are so open to the subject matter that they need people like you on there to show the difference. Like there's so many people on there that are doing like BS that they need
Hmm,
the people like you to go on there and teach about what's real and about like what can be used.
that's interesting. I'm going to open it up. There's somebody we have here, and they said, "Okay, let's get it to you." They says, "I have a fear of singing in public, but I also love to sing. Can you give me any psychic insight or advice on how I can get rid of this fear?" That's interesting.
So it's funny that divine guidance. It's really amazing that you would use that as a question. I think that singing is like being naked, but soul naked. So it's like you would be uncomfortable walking through Times Square, no clothes on. When you're singing, you're basically showing people your soul just naked. So I think you have to figure out how to dress that up. How do you feel dressed? And the way you could work on that is through psychic self-defense. So what you would do is you would create a bubble upon which that you would perform in. So imagine that you're standing. If you've ever seen somebody get inside one of those bubbles and then they run and they look like a gerbil on a hamster
Yeah.
wheel, right?
Hmm.
So if you could imagine being in this like this protected bubble that the energy can't affect you, and then slowly come up with ways energy-wise where you can try to alleviate that. I think Lloyd would probably be better able to address that, based upon your sun, rising, moon, and numbers. He'd
Hmm.
probably be able to give you some type of insights. But from an energetic practice, when we have a fear of something, we have to kind of confront it in some way, as best as you possibly can. Like any fear that I've ever had, it's about conditioning. Like how do we condition ourselves to be able to do something um, so that you don't stop yourself from doing something you want to.
Why do you think it is, John, that people run away from their fears as against dealing with the fears so they can then move on to the next situation? Why do you think that is?
Well, I think that the feeling of fear in your body can sometimes be misinterpreted, right? So I have something that I call lightning fingers. And I can tell you, I remember the first time it happened, I was in Spokane, Washington, and I was going to get ready to lecture at this thing called the Conscious Living Expo. And the famous psychic Sylvia Brown was like headlining it. And
Oh
nobody knew who the
yeah,
hell, yeah,
yeah.
nobody knew me. And
Hmm.
I remember like getting ready to walk out in front of, I want to say like 2,000 people for like the first time. It was a lot of people. And
Hmm.
all of a sudden I, I thought I had fear of doing it.
Hmm.
And then I immediately saw, and I mean, I say I saw it psychically, but like energy was like coming out of my fingers. And then I was like, wait a minute, I'm not, I'm not afraid to do this. I'm excited to do this. But excitement and fear kind of were portrayed to me in the same way. So I think like if you've ever gotten like to the point where you want to scare somebody, like and you're hiding, getting ready to, I mean, not that I have any personal experience with doing this, but I'm just saying if you maybe somebody else out there did,
Hmm.
but if you were gonna like scare somebody, that moment right before you're going to scare them, there's a little bit of an excitement inside you about what's going to happen. So I think that that could be fear for someone, you because your body's going to react to it. So that stress of excitement or the anxious feeling that you might have could be portrayed as fear when it's not really fear. So how do you channel that?
Sure. I have this person here. They was talking about their mother was tapped in when she was growing up. She could see death, pregnancy, and more. And her family used to tell her not to dream about them. Did you ever have that experience where your relatives, once they found out your gift, says, "Don't say anything about me, please"?
Yes, indeed. My Aunt Rachel, my mom's older sister, used to say to me, "Don't look at me with those eyes." She's like, "Don't look at me with those eyes." She goes, "Those eyes see things that they I don't look at."
I know that must have been a very interesting thing. Well, let me ask you this, because okay, let me see this. This person says, "Can you tell if my mom is fine? And is there anything?" This is from Gloria Walker Walters. Is there anything she would like me to do or know? If not, my mom from ancestors. And as I am not quite sure if she is strong enough to get through, which is interesting.
Is there a way of Gloria like responding like in the chat with us, or is there a way of her coming on, or it just I or
It's
she'd
it's
have
it's it's just she might have to respond subsequently. But
okay.
right now, that's it's. Is there anything you can pick up from that? Does that make sense?
I could, but I don't. I always tell people like when I did Larry King for the first time, one of the first times, he would like take the call and then hang up on them. And then I said to him during the commercial break, I was like, you need to let them speak. And he's like, what? I go, I'm gonna say something. I go, how do people know if what I'm saying is true if you don't let them speak?
Sure, sure.
So,
That
so
makes sense.
Gloria, if you can validate this, I believe that our loved ones and friends are fine. So I know your mom's fine. Um, I'm seeing breast cancer symbolism, almost as if somebody had some type of mastectomy. So I don't know if she's trying to tell me that somebody had breast cancer and passed from it, or had breast cancer and had a mastectomy, but there's something about that. And then there's a very there's somebody who goes by two different names. So there's like their birth name, their birth name might have been like um, Josie, but she goes by Rose. Like, there's a whole different kind of name that comes up there. But I think that somebody was also either a bus driver or somebody drove for transportation, or they drove for a living at one point, where they worked on trains, buses, or school buses or something like that, from what they're showing me. But I'm sure your mom is fine.
Now, this is interesting. This one says from Sabrina Moore. She says, "Hello there. She's born 6/11/69. She would like to know if there are any messages for me." Does that make sense? Do people approach you like that too, John?
They can, but again, the hard thing for me is the validation. I mean, I think that she's gonna. I think that there's like a ton of baby energy around her. So I don't know if she's like working in schools in a daycare or has a bunch of kids, but I feel like there's a bunch of baby energy around her. So um, maybe grandkids. I don't know. There's a lot of baby energy. Now, when I
Okay.
see stuff, but when I see stuff like that, that to me could be that somebody works in a NICU, somebody works in like pediatrics, somebody works in it's the symbolism of seeing kids.
Hmm. Okay, we'll hopefully later on they will begin to give us some feedback. Now, this I should be. She says she has dreams and thoughts about herself and others at times, and sometimes she doesn't know how to interpret them. Any suggestions on what research you can do for this? Now, I think you mentioned earlier when we first started, John, that you teach people how to do this too, or at least
I
how to
have.
tap
I
in?
I haven't. Yeah, I have in the past. I wrote a book called Infinite Quest, and in Infinite Quest was the book that is the how to do psychic readings book, not to do psychic readings, but to understand how the energy works book. But you're probably going to ignore me and attempt to do readings anyway. It's that book, right? That's what that book is about. And I wrote that book legitimately for my kids. I was like, hey, if anything ever happened to me, if I was abducted by aliens tomorrow, who would teach my kids what I think, feel, know? I'm like, nobody. I'm like, so let me download this. And I downloaded it in a book. Anyway, I think, Aisha, the first thing that you'd want to do is start journalizing what it is that you're feeling, and look for patterns in things. The universe presents us with patterns, and so many
Hmm.
times we don't
Hmm.
recognize the patterns, right? Now,
Hmm.
Lloyd, you teach people about the patterns of numbers. You teach them how to understand what those patterns mean, whether it be on their license plate or on their address or on their social
Hmm.
security number, right? Their passport changes. If somebody gets married and they take on a different name, you already are trained to look at life through the lens of numbers and patterns. Most
Exactly.
people, most people are not. So I think when we're starting off with energy, we want to look for the patterns of like, what is it that I'm feeling? Then we want to go to the place of not being fear-based. We want to go to the place of being skeptical. Now, this is where people get questions. They go, what? Like, did you just use the word skeptical? Yes, I did.
Yeah,
We want to be
yeah, I was going
skeptical.
to ask you that. Yeah.
Yep. And here's the reason why. If we try to explore everything from an analytical and skeptical standpoint, you're going to get closer to the good stuff. You're going to get
Ah,
more accurate information,
makes
because you're
sense.
not just relegating everything to like, oh, I'm so intuitive, or oh, I'm so psychic, or I'm so gifted. I hate the word gift. I'm so gifted. Um, you actually are digging to go deeper. So you're looking for the, and I think the best information, the best advice I was given when I started doing this was from a woman named Sandy Anastasi. And she said, you don't always have to be right with what you do, but you better well strive to be as accurate as you can. And being given young the permission to be wrong, like you're allowed to make a mistake, you're allowed to
Hmm.
misinterpret, right? You don't put that pressure on yourself. Actually makes you more accurate, because now you're pushing the boundaries and you're pushing the envelope to go deeper.
And what's amazing is I'll tell my students, as long as I've been doing this, I still make mistakes.
Of
It's
course.
part of the
And
growth process.
Right. And that's why we're teachers, because we're still students. We're always going to be students of the
Yeah,
universe.
that's my attitude. That's my attitude. I have somebody here. This is interesting. Their father passed away. They said, can John pick up about her father who's deceased since she was in elementary school? His birthday was March the 23rd of 1955. His name was Michael.
I don't, it's hard for me to actually tune into someone like that without getting, because my guides can give me information about somebody, or if I look at a photo of somebody, I can actually read the energy of the photo. It's one of the reasons why I tell somebody, if you go for a reading with a medium, don't give them a photo of the person who's passed. Don't provide them with items of the person who's passed, because
Why
you
is
can
that,
pick up
John?
on the energy of the person and not have it be a connection.
Ah,
So like if I showed you my family photo of Disney World, my trip with my mom and dad to Disney World, Lloyd, as not being a medium, you can look at that and you could describe accurately what my mom looks like, what my mom feels like, what my dad looks like, what my dad feels like, based upon the energy that you can intuitively discern from that. And
mm-hmm,
it can sound like you're actually connecting with them. But the difference between an actual connection is like if I was able to connect with, is it Trish? If I connect with Trish and then all of a sudden I can hear her, I'm in her energy, I'm in her space, and I can give her information and she can validate that, now I could build up a trust in who's coming through for her. And then
mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
I could now trust the information rather than just say like, oh, her dad's with her. Now, I do believe her dad's with her. I believe her dad's with her, and I think she's got an uncle that's also with her father. And I think that there's another dad that's not that dad, that's there. And I think that somebody there either had a vehicle accident or an accidental passing, some type of a tragedy that would have caused someone's passing. Not a healthcare thing. Not meaning that it has to be her dad, but somewhere that's connected in that family.
I want to ask you this too, John. It's very important. What we do when we pick up on people's energies, they sometimes says we have to protect ourselves with that we pick up people's auras and whatnot. What do you
Sure.
do to protect? Like if you, because everybody is not correct. We might run into some very negative, kind of challenging people like that. What do you do to protect yourself? Because we open ourselves up really to
Right.
receive the information. How do you protect yourself if that makes sense?
Glad you asked me that question. So sitting next to me, I have, I don't know if you can see this, but I have Purell, okay? And then also sitting next to me, I have Lysol wipes. Now, one might be like, why does he have Lysol wipes and Purell sitting next to him? Well, I do that because we're living through a global pandemic, which means that wherever I go, I'm going to make sure that I'm going to take the necessary precautions to make sure that I'm not going to pick up something invisible that I don't want.
Makes
So
sense.
in the medical community, you would call that universal precautions. Every hospital practices universal precautions. They treat each patient as if they have some type of medical contagion, and we want to make sure that we're not going to take it from patient to patient or spread it from person to person or get it contamination yourself.
Mm-hmm.
I I adopt that when it comes to the world of energy. So for me, the way somebody gowns up in masks and put gloves on, that's what I'm doing before I do a reading for somebody. And then when I'm done, I it's called doffing. I like take it all off, like energy wise, I power down. So you are correct, Lloyd, that there are a lot of people out there that just walk around attack reading people and ambushing them and, kind of looking and being like a spiritual peeping Tom. Not
Mm-hmm.
cool. It's
Mm-hmm.
never
Mm-hmm.
okay to enter someone's vibration without their permission.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I remember I was brought to, I can't say who, but I was brought to a celebrity client. I like you'd say that. A celebrity client brought me to their manager and they wanted to do something. And we sat in there, sat in the on the couch. So like you walk into the office and there's like a couch sitting area to the right, and his office and his like laptop was to the left. And the entire time there's that kind of vibe, like like he's just like listening, like And then my friend said, do you have any questions? And he goes, yeah, like, can you read me? And I said, well, you would have to give me permission to do that. And he goes, well, I gave you permission. And then I nailed him, like right there on the spot. And the guy literally like looked at me and went, wait a second, you literally just did that like that? Like you just did that? And I went, yes. He goes,
Mm-hmm.
but like, he goes, but did you know all of that? Like, did you get all of that the moment you sat down and you didn't say anything? And I went, absolutely not. I go, I did not. He goes, I don't understand. And I go, here's the example. I said, if I walked into your office and I walked directly to your desk and I started reading your open emailed screen, would you think that's appropriate? And he goes, absolutely not. I go, exactly. Same thing for me. I said,
Citation.
I said, you just gave me permission to get up and go over there and read your emails. I go, so I got up and I read your emails psychically. And he goes, oh, okay.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. That's interesting. I have another person here, Charlene Adams. She's a Libra one, just like you, and she said she's a dreamer and sometimes see things in her dreams. Can you tell her if her grandfather watches over her?
I can't tell her without validating that, but I could tell her that as soon as I started looking at her words, I was getting musical notes all around her, and musical notes to me represent two things: either somebody who actually deals with music in a family, or a consistent amount of prayer. If somebody worked at a church, did something at a church, nun, priest, minister, rabbi, pastor, there's some type of musical notes reference that are there. But dreams are where our information, our precognition kicks in, and that's where we're able to see glimpses and aspects of the future that's unfolding for us.
Hmm. Oh, Gloria. Remember we talked one of the first ones? She says her mom name is Gloria. Her pet's name is Eileen. Her uncle mom was a bus driver. Remember you said a bus driver.
Yep.
Okay, okay, okay. Getting some feedback. All righty. All
Thanks,
right.
Gloria.
Yeah, yeah. So I don't know who else will do that. It says, here's another one. Um, please tell me, is there a message from my dad, 1122, and how can I tell when he is around?
So I'm going to address the last part. The way you could tell when somebody or anybody's around is how you recognize them or feel them. So let's talk about food for a second.
Hmm.
Lloyd, tell me something that somebody in your family who's passed used to make that nobody else makes right now, food wise.
You want me to give you an answer?
Yeah.
A coconut cake, the most
Okay.
wonderful coconut cake.
So whoever made that coconut cake for you, if you went somewhere and you smelled that out of nowhere, the immediate thing you're going to recognize is that person. If you
Ah,
were if you were given coconut cake and you tasted it, it would immediately take you back, right? So your senses would tell you and give you a memory of a person. So, Sandra, that is what you would want to do. You would want to recognize, what is it that I'm seeing, hearing, feeling, smelling, tasting, experiencing that makes me think about my dad? And it's usually something that's personal. So, like, for example, if it's somebody like, I always tell the story that, my wife and I were having a fight once. We were driving on the Long Island Expressway. It was in the middle of winter in a snowstorm. And it got to the point in the argument where we just weren't talking now. It was the 20-minute quiet that whoever speaks next loses the argument kind of moment. And
mm-hmm,
I could tell you, we were on the Northern State Parkway. It would cross over from the LA to the Northern State Parkway, right where the Meadowbrook is.
mm-hmm.
And it literally smelled like somebody from the back seat was just spraying tea rose perfume into the
Interesting.
car.
Mm-hmm.
And I just like sat there going, crap. Now I have to ask her if she's smelling this. And I'm like, do you smell that? And she was like, yes, I smell that. And you know it's your grandmother, and she's telling you you're being an ass, right? So, like, but we both smelled it. We both smelled the tea
At
rose
the same
perfume,
time. That's
and that
interesting.
was yeah, and that was something that my grandma used to wear.
Now, here's something interesting. This person says, April, she had a vivid dream of me and a man who I believe is my soulmate. Are we going to meet soon? I guess people ask you that question about relationships all the time, don't they?
They do, and you've been around this so long, right? So you've been through all the trendy words, right?
Yep.
So you
Yep.
you went through the soulmate years, you went through the channeling years,
Oh,
you
yeah.
went through the you went through the archangel years.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Okay, so I can appreciate this conversation on a level like I can't do this with a lot of people, Lloyd. So when people used to come to me, I had it after Jeff Stern wrote his book about soulmates.
Hmm. Hmm.
Um, Everybody and their brother, like that was their question. Like, am I gonna meet my soulmate? And I finally just said, I was like, I've had it. I go, here's the deal. I go, your soulmate. I go, you don't want to meet your soulmate. You want to have a soulmate type relationship, which means you're gonna have to work at a
Interesting.
relationship. I said, because
Interesting.
if you are looking for your soulmate, it means it's probably not going to last because you've had some other lifetimes with this person, probably multiple lifetimes, and you're bringing a shit ton of karma in with this one. I go,
Yeah.
so how about we don't look for it? And if you do look for it, learn from it and then find it where you could use like a real relationship. And I just remember like that was a huge thing in the 80s and 90s was like people were looking for their soulmates.
Yeah.
Now it's their twin flame.
Yes, I heard that too. That's the new one, the twin flame and all that stuff. But flames can burn out easily too. You know what I'm saying?
Right. It's like you want to be walking around half a candle.
Yep. Here's another one from April. She said, I believe John mentioned on TikTok that he's going on tour. Is that correct? Is that what you heard?
She did. I'm actually going to be in January, going on tour in LA. I'm doing a few cities in LA, in Phoenix, and then I'm doing an event locally in Staten Island. Um, my old hood, where my first reading ever took place. I do. I kind of have like an ongoing thing. I'm like, I think I was in Staten Island one year 11 times. I just,
Wow.
it just draws. It just people come from Jersey, from Brooklyn, from Queens,
Yeah. Hmm.
from Manhattan, from England, ironically, to Staten Island. But yes, I am going to be going on tour as long as it's safe and as long as we're allowed to do it safely. And the last I did 8 events last year at the end of well now this year. I keep saying last year. I did 8 events in the end of I think October. I
Hmm.
think it was around September, October, and everybody had to be masked and they had to be vaccinated and that kind of stuff. So we're trying to keep people as safe as possible. But with this new variant, I kind of am just waiting to see
How that
what's
plays out, right?
yeah. And I think this is one of those things where whether we look at the astrology, the numerology, me psychically, there's unknowns in our lives, period. And the reason why those unknowns exist is so that we can all learn lessons. And I kind of feel like with COVID, it's been leveling the playing field, whether you're a doctor or an astrologer, I'm saying it's leveling the playing field and it's giving people the opportunity to step up and be part of humanity and find out where the unity and community comes in, and how that we can kind of rise our vibration. Because I kind of feel like, not to be too woo woo, but the planet's trying to upgrade its iOS. The planet's trying to get its operating system to be at a better efficiency,
Hmm. Hmm.
and I think that that's what this virus is. It's almost like biblical in a way. It's like, depending upon like what your beliefs are, energy wise, it feels like it's like weeding out people that are not putting humanity first. Like if they're being selfish or if they're being egotistical, they're not thinking about other people. It's like, is it so hard to throw on a mask? Wear a mask, like keep yourself safe, keep your family safe, keep others safe.
Sounds like very simple application to me, not complex
Unless,
at all.
unless you put ego in. Once you add the ego in, it's the volatility
Well, I
factor.
think the ego has really messed with a lot of people and messed up a lot of situations. And yet people's egos are normally as thin as an eggshell. That's the
Yeah.
irony of it. Very easy to break once you do. This person says, hello, my intuition is very strong these days. Can you give me some ideas how I can go deeper into that world? And her birthday is December the 8th. She
Well,
just had a birthday. Happy belated birthday.
yeah, happy belated. I think find a tool. One of the things that I will always tell somebody when I'm doing my Zoom groups, right? I do a lot of groups for folks online in the last couple of years, and ultimately there'll be a question about development. I'm always going to go from what my experience is. I think we teach what we know. So my experience is I came into this world learning about tarot, learning about cards, and I liked the concept of working with a pictorial display that made my intuition unlock the door of the person's energy and help give me an archetype of the human condition, which is what is a reading for, but to leave somebody better than you find them, with information and insights for them to make decisions, to guide them in a on a path that might be a little bit darker. So I think picking a tool would be a good thing to do, whether it be working with cards, learning about astrology, learning numerology, learning about rune casting or the I Ching, something that gives you a language, a pattern. The letters of the alphabet teach us words, which teach us sentences and how to communicate. How do we find those? That energetic alphabet is the place that I would start.
Interesting. This person here is, believe it or not, Patricia Patton. She's a Sagittarius. Her birthday is this month of Sagittarius. But believe it or not, I have to give this lady, Patty, as I call her, credit because she called me one day after doing one of my shows. She said, "You need to get John Edwards on." I says,
Aw,
"Okay." So,
well, thank
Patricia,
you.
thank you. In fact, I tried to hold up. I tried to call her to even let her know that surprise, surprise, I got John coming on and was excited. So I see she did, but giving credit where it is due. I've always been, raised to give credit where credit is due. And this is the young lady that called me out of DC and we got into a conversation. She enjoyed the show and she mentioned your name. And I said, yeah, where is John Edwards? Let me go find this guy. And that's how that
Well,
started. So
that's cool. Thank you,
thank
Patricia.
thank you so much, Patricia. So let's see. This person says, They're currently involved in a Bitcoin forex transaction that has lingered for over a year. Will this transaction be favorable for me in the long run? Do people ask questions like that to you too, John?
They do. And I could tell you, I can only tell you what I know. I don't know what Forex is, but I could tell you that I had this very weird experience probably about 2 years ago. I had just got done reading and I hopped on my couch and all of a sudden I couldn't get Bitcoin out of my head, legitimately. And I'm like, I don't know anything. I don't know stocks. I don't do any of that. So I was like, I, I need to learn about Bitcoin. So I downloaded an app called Coinbase and I started looking at like what different things were.
Hmm.
And at the time, I want to say Bitcoin was like $3,000 or $9,000. I know it was 2 years ago, 2 or 3 years ago. So whatever the lowest it was, like 2 or 3 years ago, it was at that moment. And it then just started doing this. So I've had a very positive feeling about Bitcoin, and I do think that Bitcoin is going to be something in the long term. Now, please let me just full disclaimer here. I know zero about investing in stocks. I know zero about cryptocurrency. Um, but when you ask the question, it's like I do think that that's going to become a somewhat of a standard in some way moving forward as technologies are evolving and shifting and changing. That's going to become like a new gold because there's some type of scarcity value about it from what I've understood.
Yeah, that's very interesting. This person, Goolsby, hold on, let me do this. She said her mother's birthday was 9/14, and she called on her and my dad a lot in her dreams, and she feels so real when I wake up. Are my guardians guiding me? I guess our
So
guardians are guiding us if we know how to tap in or pay attention. What do
yeah,
you?
and I think we have to say thank you. We have to come from a place of gratitude. We have to be appreciative. And then, by the way, not every, again, this is my skeptical side. Not every dream we have of somebody who's passed is actually them coming through to us. Sometimes they're just dreams and it's us moving through our grief. But then you have these like moments where these dreams are like what she's having, and they're profound, they're vivid, they're detailed, and they're energetically giving us the opportunity to feel connected. And that connection is to give us guidance, to give us love, to give us support, to give us patience, to help us when we're trying to navigate something, not to feel alone. And I think, again, talking about something that people have really needed to hear, there have been moments in my career, Lloyd, where I wound up on Larry King Live the night before the September 11th. September 10th, 2001. I'm on Larry King Live, and
Hmm.
it was a really powerful show because it was very different than any other experience I had had with him. We got into like talking about grief, and it was a very different question that he asked, very different feeling and theme. So much so that when the show was over, I looked over at him and I was like, Larry, thank you. I go, you have no idea how many people you helped today. And he kind of like looked at me like, really? He's like, I think it was just kind of like normal. And I was like, no. And then I had talked to his wife, Sean, after the show. And I said, you need to tell him tonight, like when you guys like literally the night's over, you're getting in bed, heads on the pillow. I go, you need to let him know, like he made a really big impact on people by him asking those questions. Now, I didn't realize the gravity of that statement until the next day.
That
And
makes
Lloyd,
sense.
I can't tell you how many people have said to me after the fact, um, the last thing my husband and I watched, the last thing my brother and I watched was you before he went to work the next day. And, it gives me comfort and solace to know that we were having a conversation about death and dying and grief and the afterlife, and then the next day the person passes. So like that stands out for me.
Yeah, yeah,
And going around the world and touring, I kept saying to people, just know that nobody passes alone, nobody passes alone, nobody passes alone, not realizing the gravity of what that statement has been. So for people that couldn't be with their loved ones and friends if they passed, whether it be because you were in a different part of the world, you couldn't get to them, or COVID happened and you couldn't get to them because you weren't allowed to, just know that we are always met by friends and family that have gone before us that help us and greet us and kind of light that journey.
that's amazing. Remember the incident you had talked about where you were in the car and smelled cologne? Well,
Yes,
this woman, Natalie, says she lost her husband 3 years ago and she keeps smelling his cologne a lot lately. What does
that's
that
just his
mean? And I
way.
think you answered
Not,
that
yeah,
question.
yeah, that's his way, Natalie. That's his way of letting you know that he's around you. So that's immediately you smell it, and you know that it's there. Somebody must have had an alcohol problem in the family, or somebody had some type of liver issue, Natalie, because they're showing me alcohol situations. So the way they show that to me would let me know that somebody was known for their drinking, or somebody had an issue with alcohol, maybe that he's with in the family. And I think there's a J named like Jimmy or James or something Jack related, Natalie, that's there, living or past, that's connected to him. And besides your birthday being in October, I think October has a different meaning for either your family or your husband's family. So whether somebody was born in October or somebody passed in October. I hope that helps, Natalie.
Yeah. Um, Let me ask you about, for example, if a person like her is experiencing the smell of a cologne, does she talk to the the spirit per se? Does that make sense?
Sure, and she doesn't have to do it out loud. Like she could just be like,
Yeah,
"Hey,
yeah, because some
yeah,
people might feel they're being, silly or foolish or whatever. But if she's feeling and say, "Hi, honey, I hope you're good on the other side," or whatever the case is, that's cool, right? No?
100%." Whether you want to write that in a journal, like write it, whether you want to type it in your notes app, you want to say it out loud, whatever it is that helps you build a bridge to them where you can be 50% of that equation. No greater gift we can give them than the recognition that they are still there.
Let me tell you this. I told you we've got about 4 more minutes. We're gonna spill over a little bit
Sure.
because I want to also make it clear that this is where John can be reached. So anybody who wants to reach out to him, anybody that wants books or whatever the case is, everything you need to know about this gentleman, my special guest, is on johnedward.net. That's all you got to do. Just go to johnedward.net. And you said everything they need to know how to contact you or questions and
It's all
everything is
there.
right there
Yep,
at that
it's all
site.
there.
Okay,
That's my hub right
good,
there.
good. And what I want to do was also, this was this was one of the books that you had wrote in
Yep, that's my first one.
99. I know. And you know
Yep,
what's
that's
interesting? You're born on the 19th. And when you appeared on Larry King, he was also born on November 19th. In your first book, 1999, adds up to 28. 2 plus 8 is 10. 1 plus 0 is 1. I know that's
and you know what's really funny is I don't know. It might have been even like June 19th that I was on his show
that's interesting. Yeah,
of
but one is
1999.
very
I
important.
don't remember the date. I believe it was June.
But this is your very first book, and it's available. All these books I'm showing right now, if you want to, are available on Amazon. Can they
Yep.
also get it through johnedward.net too, if that's the case?
I should
Or
probably
you
know the
just
answers to that, Lloyd, but I don't. I would send them to Amazon.
yeah, it's easier. It's easier. Now, this one you wrote when was the crossing over in 2001.
Yes. And
Now, what about
I'm
this book?
I don't know. The first thing I'm going to think about is like, what was up with my hair? That book, that book was the book that I wrote while I was doing the TV show Crossing Over, and I wanted to give people a peek behind the scenes of what was taking place and how the show came about and what went on. And it was a breakthrough show. It was an amazing opportunity, but it really wasn't easy on me as a person, to be honest.
I listen. I can imagine that with everybody and their mother pulling at you and expect you to walk on water on top of that. What about this book that came out in 2010?
That book was kind of like the other, so we went from One Last Time, which was the beginning of my journey, and talked about my mom's passing. And then Crossing Over was the journey about me professionally, where I went after One Last Time. Afterlife was the next one. It was like the trilogy for me, where I talked about, more of both. And I touched upon my troubled relationship with my dad. As you can see, the forward was written by Larry King in this book.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So yeah, this was like the another book in the non-fictional journey for me to help people understand not only who I was. It's always about it's not really about me, it's about the subject matter.
And this is your latest book that just came out.
It is. So this was published originally for my online subscription-based community. And it was published like a weekly kind of chapter. Every week a chapter came out. And then it's one of my favorites. Like this is one of them that I want to see turned into a like mini series. And it's a novel. So this is about the afterlife, and this is about losing someone and what it's like in the afterlife, and them watching us. but the genesis of this book would be like Grey's Anatomy meets heaven.
Oh, okay. And this one is one that we had talked about just before going on the show that you would like to turn into a series.
Yes, that one.
Hold on, wait a minute. Let me
So
do
these last
something
two
here.
that you're talking about, the last two, Above and Beyond and Fallen Masters. Fallen Masters, this book was downloaded to me. Like the concept of this book was downloaded to me. I want to say 2008-ish, around 2008. My guides
Hmm.
told me that I had to write this book, and it was sparked from. I read an article on like AOL that said dark matter was expanding exponentially in the universe.
Okay.
And as soon as like I read it, I heard the Vedic phrase "as above, so below."
Hmm.
So what if dark forces were expanding exponentially on Earth? So that book is about the battle of good and evil. It's kind of like a tip of the hat to Stephen King's The Stand meets Lost, but it's like the battle of positive and negative. And somebody, somebody a couple of years ago said to me, "I know that you wrote this as a novel, but this is kind of happening right now. Like this is kind like is this like predictive?" More than a couple people did that on Twitter. It was funny.
Hmm. Listen, I have somebody, this is interesting. They said they've never asked for a reading before. So I understand about when you get somebody who is very skeptical and they decide to put their foot forward. They're born May 5th, 80. Can you just pick up something just a second? I won't keep you much longer.
I wouldn't be able to say. I think we're talking about books and writing. I think that this is a period. This is a person that we're looking at as getting ready to write, or is involved in writing, or should be involved in writing, whether it be like novels or poetry or textbooks or blogging, but like writing. The other thing I'm going to say is that the level of being stubborn that you're probably hearing that you are, people always say that Taurians are stubborn. I don't like the word stubborn for Taurians. I always say that they just need a lot of information to make an informed decision. So if you let the people around you know, read, if you let the people around you know, like, hey, not going to I'm not going to just jump because somebody says, hey, let's do this. You need a lot of information in order to make an informed decision. Things will go smoother within relationship and business dynamics.
John, I tell you, this has been an amazing experience. The hour has went faster than I anticipated. Anything else coming up that we maybe not discussed or that you want to let the
No, I'm
um,
just really flattered to be able to sit here with you and talk. And like I said, you're one of the first people that I studied your teachings and your material. So to be able to be sitting here having this conversation is very cool for me. So thank you, Lloyd.
and likewise too. Oh, and by the way, let me do this because I got to. Um, sometimes. Oh, right here. This
There we are.
is John and I when I was at his studio,
That's
and
so cool.
yeah, this was out in Long Island. It was great. In fact, you had me on twice, so it was an honor and a pleasure to return the favor in kind.
Thank you. Thank you
No,
very,
thank
very
you,
much.
John. Thank you. So anyway, I want to hold up. Let me see. Let me get this straight. There we go, John. See how that works? Okay, there we go. John, thank you. All the best to you and your
All the
wonderful
best to
family
you.
and
Happy
all
New
those
Year.
other good
Happy
things. Happy
holidays.
holidays, New Year, and all that stuff. I need to give you a reading too, because you're gonna
I
have
will, I
one
will,
heck of a reading. You're gonna
I
have
will
one
take
heck
it.
of a year. Seriously. Seriously. So we'll work that out and you give me a few minutes of your time, but it's going to be similar to what you went through in 2013 and 2002 and as far back as 1995.
Well,
Those were very,
1995, I
very,
got married. 2002, I had my son. So those are all good years. 2013, I can't really remember 2013.
yeah, but everything is cyclical as we know. But anyway, we'll talk about that later. John, thank you. Thank you, Papa,
Thank you.
bottom of my heart. Have a nice day. All
All right,
righty.
bye, guys.
Okay. And everybody, I want to thank John for taking time to go on the show. Oh, by the way, next this coming Wednesday, we're going to have this distinguished brother on. His name is Miguel Rosario. He is a tarot reader, a master tarot reader. So he's going to be on this Wednesday with us. So make sure you tune in and whatnot. And then one day I'm going to hook him up with Kay, also who does tarot, and see them both together. But right now, he will be on display this Wednesday, giving you sessions. And everybody, I want to thank you very, very much. Let me do this. Okay. All right. I'm going to get me some help. Okay. This overdue. I've asked some, I mean, somebody's already volunteered. I've been a little slow on it, but I'm going to make that happen. And in fact, I'm making a call tomorrow to make that happen. Everybody, thank you so much. Y'all all have a blessed day, a safe day. See you on Wednesday. All righty. In the meantime, y'all take care of yourselves. Okay. Peace.